Oh, let's see. Yes, it works well. Well, good morning, everybody. How many of you were here last week? Okay. As you may or may not know, I couldn't finish what I was talking about last week. So this is part 2. I will try to give you a little summary of just the ideas of last week, so you have like a frame of reference for this next stage. It's a very organic next step, so don't worry about it too much. This talk should stand alone, but it does build on the first one. And the first one, if you remember, I used the analogy that Vajrayana Dharma practice is kind of built like a full-blown symphony with all the players, the whole symphony orchestra playing. And we're kind of the symphony and the conductor and the audience, the whole thing. And the way they set these things up, which to me is endlessly interesting and just brilliant, because when I actually practice, there's actually some benefit or some experience like going to a symphony. And how does a composer do what they do? Well, they start with an overture, kind of an introduction. And after the overture that introduces like the themes of the music, right? They go to the first movement, which is, okay, let's build the atmosphere that we're going to have this musical experience in. Well, meditation practice is like that too. So we start in the beginning with the overture, and it turns out that the overture in practice always starts with motivation. We got to start with where we actually are, not with where we actually aren't or wish we were. But it's okay, wherever we actually are. And that's an important thing. One of the reasons that some teachers don't teach this, and some Buddhists don't pursue this, is because they say it's dangerous. Well, why is it dangerous? Here's why it's dangerous. If we don't take the time to calm down and to really see where we're at and where we're coming from, the way we're reacting to the world, and we just want to use this magical practice from the magical mountains of Tibet to get out of a tough situation that we find ourselves in. That's called spiritual bypassing. And that's unhealthy psychologically, to like block off the genuine experience of your life. And in fact, it is the opposite thing from what Dharma's about. Dharma's about two things really. First, there is method, which is these set of practices that bring us to a particular experience. And the other is wisdom. And wisdom is what the motivation or the aspiration, the vision is built from. And what it's built from is this idea that while we kind of are hardwired to perceive ourselves to be alone in whatever we're doing, actually, on levels that are too subtle to stay connected to moment, because we're distracted by what we want and what we don't want and all the things that come up for us. we miss this subtle thing that's there all the time. And the subtle thing that's there all the time is that you have Buddha nature, and that every other sentient being has Buddha nature, every single one. And we're all connected through this sharing this awakened nature. Call it livingness, just life energy. You know how good you feel when you get like to a certain sunrise and it's just like, wow. It's like that. And it's like that all the time, but we distract ourselves. So Dharma practice is about revealing to us the way it is all the time, but we're just missing it, and to develop the skills and the insight and the ability to recall it and return to it. So we get these structured practices in where there are different movements, just like a symphony, that take us through an experience. And once you've had one experience, you see a door. And it's like you can walk through the door. And then there's the next experience. So there's this sense of, okay, there's this first overture and the first movement, and the second movement, sometimes a third, and a finale. And we got through what I would identify as the overture, and the overture being taking refuge. And it's really, really important to understand that the whole thing is already contained in the refuge practice. Sometimes we just go through that thing. We memorize the words, and it just becomes a kind of thing, a habitual thing we do. And that's not a problem, by the way. It's not a problem. However, with some depth and understanding and really giving our minds the opportunity to experience refuge, something opens up, all right? And so what opens up? Well, we say the refuge prayer 3 times, which we're about to do. And the first time can be, I'm just going to offer you this, an acknowledgement that Buddha's everywhere. This enlightenment, this sense of goodness is always around. We just miss it. And so when we take refuge for the first time, of the 3 times we say the refuge prayer, we're taking refuge in the Buddha and recognizing Buddha is present, even if we're missing it, and realizing our predicament is that we've cut ourselves off, usually through contemplating the preciousness of life, the fragility of life, the cause and effect of life, and ultimately the fact that we keep chasing around to try to manipulate life to give us what we want, and somehow, even when we think we get what we want within a very short period of time, turns out, yeah, that's not what we wanted. That's just a recognition of the idea that we're barking up the wrong tree. And so refuge is telling us, okay, yeah, you're not going to get a refuge out of that, out of that kind of samsaric, hope I get a pat on the head, hope I avoid, getting criticized, all those kinds of things. Even if I did this talk perfectly and people loved it and I get a pat on the head, it's like you'll forget what I said pretty soon. And I will be on to the next thing and feeling whatever I have to feel. These kinds of rewards, ego trip rewards that we get, no matter what we do, they're fine. They just don't last. They just don't last. So what lasts? Well, the goodness in you lasts. and the goodness in me lasts. And that's true for every other being. So refuge is saying, okay, I'm going to take refuge in the Buddhas, and that's all of you. You're at least potential Buddhists, right? And I take refuge in the Dharma. So the Dharma is those communications that we have that reveal the truth that we're all connected. And refuge in the Sangha, which is us, and also those who have gone before us and have passed this along and have fully realized it. Guess what? Once you fully realize it, you really see what it is. You really see that there's all this potential for goodness in the world, and you wake up to it in yourself. What's the one thing you want? You want everybody else to have that good experience too, right? That's all you want. And you know that if they did, if we all did, things would be okay. Things would be better, right? So we take refuge in the Sangha as a place to be, to work on this, bringing this non-self-centered view to fruition. So that's why we're here. And then we say it again. Okay, so that's all external, the way we usually experience the world. And then we do it again, and you bring it inside, and you realize, oh, there's this kind of atmosphere, this environment that is just has to do with how I feel psychologically, how I feel physically, how I feel all these ways. And so recognizing that there are all these feels up in there that could be one way, it could be another way, could be pleasant, could be not pleasant, could be just kind of blah. Could be anything. From the first time, we recognize we have the potential for simply tying in to this resonance of goodness that we have in ourselves and letting the other stuff drop. So what do we have there? Well, that's shamatha. That's why we do shamatha practice, right? So that as things come up, and we realize they're impermanent, we do that on the short end instead of the long end, and we just drop them and we rest. Shamatha practice. It's absolutely critical. It's the root of this. Otherwise, it's, like I said, a little too easy with these imagination practices for the ego to co-opt them and for us to try to avoid our life instead of embrace it with goodness and love. So it's important to do shamatha. And we're taking refuge in our own shamatha practice when we say the refuge prayer the second time, because we're engendering this inner environment. And then the third time, we just do it in a sense of rest, just as it is. But you can see what's happened. We've started where we are, which is this like perception of self and other, and we've taken it in and in and in till we catch a glimpse of how things actually are. And we've given our minds a minute or two or three at the beginning to just catch up, to be introduced to that reality, to be introduced to that way of enjoying or being in life, just like an overture introduces you to how the symphony is going to go. So then we got to the second part. And before I do that, let's do the refuge prayer together 3 times. And if you remember from last week, I want you to start by giving yourself a little hug. So put your right hand under your left armpit and your left hand over your right shoulder. And give yourself a little hug. And while you're doing that, breathe in and breathe out. And as you relax, any tension or any distraction, anything that's in the way of you being here, just let it flow away. So from that state of mind and experience, let's say the refuge prayer. We'll do it, chant it in Tibetan the first time, and then say it in English the second 2 times. Sunje chudam suki chognam la, changshu pardu dagni kya tsuchi, dagi jinso gipe sunam ki, drola pinshir sanje rupar sho. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the assembly most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I achieve enlightenment for the sake of all beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the assembly most excellent, I take refuge until I reach enlightenment. By the merit of generosity and the other good deeds, may I achieve enlightenment for the sake of all beings. Thank you. So, I'm going to read you a little thing that I wrote just about this predicament, because we're now in the first movement. In the first movement, and this is true of every practice I know, has 2 things in it. And you'll see this when you do Chenrezig practice and you do Tara practice or any practice. It's going to have offerings, and it's going to have a way of generating through your imagination a world where everything is connected. And then you'll meditate on compassion. That's what happens. Why offering? Well, it's not so much that Buddhas need what we have to give them. Obviously, why would we do this, Well, because when we offer something, think of yourself as like a little kid bringing home a drawing that you made in school and giving it to your mom or dad, and they get so excited and they put it up on the refrigerator and you're so happy. This is a little like that. We're just kids, and we're bringing this thing that we're creating in our imagination of a world where everything's connected in kindness and compassion. And we brought this drawing and we're offering it. So you can literally offer everything that appears and exists. And the Buddhas don't need it, but they love that you brought it to them. And they're going to hang it on, the Buddha's going to hang it on the refrigerator and smile to you every time. So it's good to make the offering. Why? Because it's something we can do. There are probably other things to do to make connection, but generosity is the simplest, and it's the most available to every person at every stage of the game, from little kids all the way to very old kids. And so offering becomes a part, and the really good lamas talk about it as accumulating merit. That's what you're doing during offerings. So your curiosity needs to kick in. I'm a big fan of this, using imagination along with curiosity. Why? Why call it merit? What's that? Well, when you're connecting to your Buddha nature to somebody else's, there can only be kindness and compassion that exists. And there is nothing more meritorious than bringing more kindness and compassion to this world. That's why. It's very simple, it's very direct, it's very experiential. So since generosity and offering is something we can do to open the gates of blessing, because once mom and dad are smiling at you and they're delighted in you, that really feels good. You feel the blessing. So generosity opens the gates of blessing. Not because we're great practitioners or because we know what we're doing any more than a 3 or a 4-year-old knows what they're doing. We're babies. That's fine. So we have these practices that remind us right now, after we've taken refuge, okay, let's really make this connection a little stronger. That's what that first movement's about. And the way we're going to make it stronger is by offering and then meditating on compassion. Why do we do that? Well, again, it's a matter of starting where you are. This is something we've all got. Even the meanest person in the world has somebody or something they feel compassionate towards. I remember watching Citizen Kane, and you would think Orson Welles did a heck of a job being, a misanthrope for pretty much the whole thing. And at the very end, he taps into this childhood memory that opens his heart. Rosebud, for those, spoiler alert, for those of you who have seen the movie or haven't. Yeah, that happens for a lot of people on their deathbed. They realize all the goodness they've shared, and they realize all the stuff they didn't do that they probably should have, and all that stuff, and they finally get real with themselves, and boom, they're gone. Well, Dharma practice is about getting real with ourselves now, so that we can see reality now, so that we can create this environment of kindness and compassion in this world and live in it for a while before we have to exit. We all have to exit. We all know that. So I wrote this thing. It's like, how do we uncreate this predicament? Well, like I said, we're going to get to a compassion practice. But let me give you this little thing. I don't know if it's any good or not. I read something and it made me start writing, and this is what I wrote. Dharma practice is about training in another method designed to create the conditions for happiness and ultimately for freedom from ignorance of thinking we are somehow separate from our life that is happening to us. How do we create this sense of life happening to us? Well, this is what I wrote. There are loops, Fruit Loops. Most people don't realize that life doesn't repeat because of fate. It repeats because of loops. Two very different cycles we can fall into without even noticing. At the center of both is intention, a kind of combination of view and aspiration, which is why we do the first part first. We want to set our intention. because we definitely want to be in a helpful loop, not an unhelpful one. Intention is key for that. So I went on to say, not the intention we say we have, but the intention we act from when things get uncomfortable. There's this Zen story. A soldier named Nobushige came to Hakuin and asked, is there really a paradise and a hell? Who are you? Inquired Hakuin. I'm a samurai, the warrior replied. You, a soldier? Exclaimed Hakuin. What kind of ruler would have you as his guard? Your face looks like that of a beggar. Nobushige became so angry that he began to draw his sword, but Hakuin continued. So you have a sword. Your weapon is probably much too dull to cut off my head. As Nobushige drew his sword, Hakuin remarked, here open the gates of hell. At these words, the samurai, perceiving the master's discipline, sheathed his sword and bowed. Here open the gates of paradise, Hakuin said. So you can see what happened. There's two levels here. There's this level of life is happening to me, and this is offending me, and I'm going to do something about it, and all that kind of thing, right? And then this very skilled swordsman was about to do something very unskillful, like kill a Zen master. I mean, there you go. Here open the gates of hell. So how do you get to that kind of place? Well, there's this thing called the victim loop. This is the loop of unconscious living. Something happens. A situation triggers discomfort, and instead of facing it, we ignore what hurts. We deny our role, blame circumstances or people, rationalize our behavior, resist change, hide from the truth, and then the same situation shows up again. Different face, same lesson. Who's had that? Me, yeah. The victim loop feels safe because it protects the ego. It's always about what I like and what I don't like, how I see it and how I don't see it. And, there's the other thing. I'll shortcut this story. This other Zen story about the scholar who goes to meet the Zen master, and the Zen master invites him over for a cup of tea, and the scholar says, please give me your wisdom. And the Zen master says, sure, and he comes out. He doesn't turn the tea upside down. And he just starts pouring tea on the bottom of the teacup, and it's going everywhere. And the guy says, what's going on here? And the Zen master said, well, you came so full of your own ideas and opinions, whatever I say is just going to bounce off and just like this tea, make a big mess. So I'm not inclined to talk about this with you right now. Suzuki Roshi used to tell this story. He used to say, in the mind of the expert, there are few possibilities. In the mind of a beginner, there are many. Strive always to be a beginner. And the way that ties in is we do these practices. What I would encourage is find one you like that you feel connected to, whether it's Chenrezig or Tara or any of the other practices you can get good instruction on, and then do them. Pick one to do every day and become its friend. Memorize it, really make it a part of yourself, and it'll start talking to you. So always be a beginner. Once you get to be an expert, you'll move on to the next one, right? Well, you won't get the good of it if you do that. I promise you. That's my experience. So, the victim loop feels safe because it protects ego. But safety comes at a cost. Stagnation. How many feel that? Yeah. Nothing grows here. Nothing heals here. Only stories do. And I've got a lot of stories. See, I mean, I'm totally lost still, but at least I recognize that. And I holler for help, It's like, help, Buddha. Okay. Then there's the accountability loop. So there's the victim loop and the accountability loop. This is the loop of conscious growth. The same situation arises, but this time we choose differently. We recognize what's really happening. Our own response, not the story. And we forgive ourselves. And we forgive others. We examine ourselves without self-attack. Learn the lesson, take action, even when it's uncomfortable. This loop doesn't feel easy, and it's not, but it feels free, and it is. Because every pass through it makes you wiser and lighter and stronger. And that's the important thing I want to say about having a daily practice that has some kind of, where you go long and deep with it. Because every pass makes you wiser and lighter and stronger. So that's the gift of the first movement, is setting that up. Both loops begin with the same situation. The difference is choice. You don't escape the victim loop by blaming less people. You escape it by telling yourself the truth. And you don't enter the accountability loop by being perfect. You enter it by being honest. That's one that these are like notes to myself. This is something that I do. I tend to go for perfection when that's not really what's required, So, accountability is not punishment, it's self-respect. Forgiveness is not weakness, it's clarity. Growth doesn't happen when life gets easier. It happens when we get braver. So ask yourself today, which loop am I feeding? And which one is feeding me? Because the moment you change your loop, your entire trajectory shifts. The question is always about life. The answer is always about the one asking the question. Okay. I think it's really important to have that kind of understanding. That's why, for me, I'm lucky. I like to spend time and think about my practice. So I think I've read my practice through in English like thousands of times because I understand English and I can contemplate in English and I can't contemplate in Tibetan or in Chinese or in Persian or I'm a native English speaker. So in all honesty, if I want to go deep with something, I have to do it in the language I understand. There's a great experiment. I'm trying to remember who did this. I think it was Dzongtsar Khyentse Rinpoche. When Tibetan Dharma was first coming to the West, there was a big conference of the highest lamas And they all got together to try to figure out how to teach this to us. Because we're coming from different places with a different psychology and a different culture and a different language. Everything's different, and they're just like. And there was this big movement to keep all the practices all the time in Tibetan, a little like the old Catholic Church keeping everything in Latin, or synagogues keeping everything in Hebrew, or mosques keeping everything in Arabic. I mean, cultures do this. The identity piece is a big deal, but it doesn't liberate you. It kind of keeps you in the victim loop, if you think about what I just said that was. So, Dzongtsar Khyentse Rinpoche said, I got an idea. And he brought out a Shakespeare sonnet, and he read it in English to these non-English speaking Tibetans. Highest expression of English in the English language, probably. Certainly up there in the pantheon, right? And he said, what'd you get out of that? And these guys who were all probably realized beings said, well, the rhythms were interesting and the rhymes where they were interesting and those but we didn't get much out of it. And he said, what do you think our students are going to get if we make them do all these beautiful things in a language they don't understand? They're not even as smart as we are. We're not getting this. How are they going to get that? It was a very good point. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't practice in Tibetan. I actually think we should. But when we're on our own and we're sinking into the parts that really resonate with us, I think we should grab a book and study the practice a little bit. There are books about all these practices. And we should do it in English and really let our curiosity, well, why are we doing this? So I had this insight by doing my practice in English about offerings, opening the gates of blessing. That came from my practice, not from a book. So now it's in there, and I don't have to try to remember anything. It's just the way I've experienced it, and I can share it. I want the same for every practitioner. And it's possible. These are so beautifully designed, it's possible to do that. So take your time with it. Find something you really love and sink into it. It'll be very rewarding. So moving on in the compassion thing, obviously, when you're doing practice, if the understanding of compassion is really deep in you, just when you say the word compassion, a whole kind of environment comes up in your mind. You don't have to take a sidebar and do a separate thing, all right? But I want to walk you through, because of the times that we're in the world right now, a form of Tonglen that was shared by a Lama in California, Lama Michael Gregory. He called it compassion meditation for violence. And because of the world we're in right now and the way it's behaving, and this idea of being authentic in practice, I kind of pulled this one out of the memory banks and I wanted to share it with you. So this is a little experiential piece. It's a guided meditation on the compassionate awareness of violence. So let us begin by finding a comfortable posture. Seated with straight but relaxed spine, hands gently resting in your lap. And gently close your eyes, lower your gaze. Take a deep breath in, filling your lungs completely, and then slowly releasing it. Letting go of any tension you may be holding. Now bring your attention to your natural breath. Simply observe the inhalation and the exhalation without needing to change anything. Notice how the breath enters and how it leaves. The simple rhythm of life flowing through you. Now bring your attention to your natural breath. And say to yourself, breathing in, I'm aware of violence within myself and within the world. As you breathe out, you silently say, breathing out, I'm determined to look with the eyes of compassion at the violence within myself and within the world. Take a few moments to settle into this rhythm, breathing in awareness and breathing out compassion. Breathing in awareness and breathing out compassion. Now, gently turn your awareness inward without judgment. Observe any places within yourself where anger, resentment, or fear may arise. These emotions are not wrong. They are simply energies moving through us, shaped by our experiences and our intentions, our wounds, and our conditioning. Can you acknowledge them with kindness? Can you hold them with the same care you would hold a hurting child? Breathing in, acknowledge, yes, there is pain within me. Breathing out, soften into it. May I meet the pain with compassion. Breathing in, yes, there's pain in me. Breathing out, soften. May I meet this pain with compassion. Now expand your awareness beyond yourself. Sense the suffering in the world, the conflicts, the injustices, the struggles that exist in every corner of humanity. And without turning away, without pushing it aside, simply recognize that pain is present. The violence we see in the world is not separate from us. It's born from fear, from wounds, from misunderstandings passed down through generations. Breathing in, recognize there is suffering in the world. Breathing out, offer. May I meet this suffering with compassion. Imagine now that your breath carries the warmth of kindness, as though each inhalation gathers all the sorrow and each exhalation sends out gentle, healing light. Visualize this light filling your heart and radiating outward, touching those who suffer, those who act in violence, who are victims of it, those who live in fear because of it. No one is excluded from this compassion. So breathing in, you hold the suffering of the world. And breathing out, you offer understanding and peace. Now, gently place one hand over your heart and feel the warmth of your own touch, the presence of your own care. You too are worthy of this compassion. If there are places within you that hold pain, that hold anger, let them be bathed in the same gentle light you extend to others. Breathing in, say silently, I'm not separate from this world. Breathing out, say, I choose compassion. I am not separate from this world. I choose compassion. As we prepare to close, let this intention settle deeply within you. To walk through the world with awareness, to see clearly the suffering that exists and to meet it, not with more anger, not with more fear, but with the unwavering strength of compassion. Take a final deep breath in and exhale slowly. Gently begin to bring your awareness back to the present moment. Feel the ground beneath you, the air around you. If your eyes are closed, softly open them and carry this awareness with you. So that is an example of not bypassing, but going deeply in and bringing compassion and kindness to everything. Guess what? If we train our minds to do that, slowly, we'll be able to see when we get reactive, somebody does this, I get angry about it, But if I practice slowly, I don't have to react in anger. I can say, oh yeah, there's that loop again. Yeah. And I can drop out of that one and switch. The point about practice is when we practice this on the cushion, of course it's not, what we call real life. It's this thing we've made with our imagination and our curiosity. But oh, how powerful and oh, how useful it is in training our minds to engender the qualities of enlightenment. It's so powerful. And all of a sudden, our mind will remember when we're in the thick of it somewhere, like the samurai swordsman. The next time he meets Hakuin, and Hakuin kind of gives him the business, maybe he smiles at him and says, "Thank you. You're so right. I'm working on it." If you have the attitude that you're working on it and you don't have to defend, who you are, but you have some kindness and compassion and forgiveness for yourself, holy moly, you're free. You don't have to react out of like unbridled desire or unbridled anger. And that's the point. The three poisons that the Buddha taught, three mental poisons, are this unbridled desire. I want what I want because I want it, because that's just what I want, because that's how I am, because that's, what makes life good. Oh, never have that. I want to avoid that. I hate that. Why do you hate it? I hate it because I hate it. Oh, why is that? Oh, I don't know. So that's the third one. You've got the overweening desire and the hatred, and then the total ignorance. No, I don't get it. I don't know what loop I'm in. In order to take the next step on the path, well, actually, we have to contemplate these things, and we have to develop some new strength in our intention muscles that include a vision we have for the interdependence of everything. And we have to build some strength in these mental muscles we have that realize that since everything's connected, kindness and compassion is what I want to flood the zone with. Not my self-righteousness, not me being right and everybody else being wrong. No, that's not what I want to flood the zone with, right? And these practices are all about training us to be able to do that in the moment. So, in the second movement, generally is the building of the practice. It depends on what practice you choose, and I would say just follow along. And it'll tell you to, imagine yourself with 4 arms. Okay. All right. And your name is going to be Chenrezig, which means loving eyes. I said the word Chenrezig 8 gajillion million times over probably 20 years before I saw a good translation of what that means. When I saw that name means loving eyes, it changed everything. Because then the text is saying, visualize yourself as Chenrezig, and I'm saying, visualize myself as loving eyes. Wow, big difference. All of a sudden, it's not necessarily about 4 arms or 1,000 arms or 1 head or 11 heads or whatever the heck. Those all are to also open up parts of our curiosity and our imagination that help us grow. True, but ultimately, seeing yourself as Chenrezig means seeing yourself as loving eyes. That's it. So that's usually what the second movement's about. And I won't go much into that simply because they're all great, and some of you will like one thing and some of you will like another, and they each have their wonderful bells and whistles and features. And then at the end, there are 2 parts. One's called the dissolution, which is, okay, we've had our workout. You know what you do after you've had, these are like workouts to me. It's like being on the jungle gyms. Like grab this, grab that, climb here, climb there. trains my body, trains my mind, everything gives me an experience. But sooner or later, I got to go home and do whatever I have to do. So that's what the dissolution stage is like, okay, letting go of the playground. And you're just kind of relaxing and letting the vision that you've created for yourself just melt away. Just melt away. And you can get to a place where it's just open. It's just kind of like at the end of a workout, you go home, you take a shower, and then you just plots into a couch. And you just kind of stare at the ceiling and say, Well, that's a good state. And just let yourself do that at the end of practice. There are formal ways of dissolution, and basically it's like allowing everything to dissolve as a blessing for all the beings that you've invited to that space and you've practiced with that day, both visible and invisible. Okay. But there's always also just this sinking into the couch thing and saying, And that'll last for a while, just like it does in ordinary life. And you'll start having thoughts again. Your mind will start going back to thinking about stuff. What you're going to cook for dinner, or maybe some elevated thing, or some angry, profane thing. Doesn't matter. And at that point, at the end of dissolution, with the first thought, no matter what it is, just change it. And remind yourself, say, I am Chenrezig. I am loving eyes. All right? Then you're ready to get up off the cushion and move into your day as loving eyes. And you've trained your mind to see yourself that way, vividly. It's a wonderful thing. It's a big gift to give yourself every day. And the dedication, we've got the dedication prayer on here. I want to read to you this one, though, that I happen to like a lot. It's the end of a Chenrezig practice. I used it last week too, because it's a summary of this it's a summary of the practice, and also opens the door for going to the next step in our daily life. And so it's beautiful in that way. Due to this merit, may we soon attain the enlightened state of Chenrezig, that we may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their suffering. May the precious Bodhi mind not yet born arise and grow. May that which is born have no decline, but increase forevermore. Due to the positive potentials accumulated by myself and others in the past, present, and future, may anyone who merely sees, hears, remembers, touches, or talks to me be freed in that very instant from all sufferings and abide in happiness forever. In all rebirths, may I and all sentient beings be born in a good family, have clear wisdom and great compassion, be free of pride, and devoted to our teachers. In whatever guise you appear, O Chenrezig, whatever your retinue, your lifespan, and pure land, whatever your name, most noble and holy, may I and all others attain only these. By the force of these praises and requests made to you, may all disease, poverty, fighting, and quarrels be calmed. May the Dharma and all auspiciousness increase throughout the worlds and directions where I and all others dwell. And then it gives some advice for you, because you've said you're Chenrezig, right? And he says, when you're doing your daily activities, visualize yourself as Chenrezig. as loving eyes, and the environment and beings around you as Chenrezi's Pure Land, with many Chenrezis. And when you eat or enjoy other sense pleasures, offer them to Chenrezi. So we're back to offering again, just in the day-to-day. And whenever you are praised, think the other people are praising Chenrezi. Why does he put that last part in there? See, curiosity is very important. Ask yourself, why did he put that last part in there? Well, that's a good question. I think it's because the goal of this isn't for us to wind up as, a superhero in some kind of tights and a cape and a mask or whatever. It's not like that. And yet, when you do these practices, things do change internally. Your energy changes, your calmness changes. People pick up on it. The subtle goal of this is that you're not becoming a different person. You're becoming an environment. Have you ever felt it when you're around somebody who's a great practitioner and for whatever reason you just get all kinds of feels? You just melt inside. It's because they've turned themselves into an environment of kindness and compassion. And I think it's good to keep in mind where we're headed with all this. That's where we're headed with all this. That's what these practices bring us to in our lives. And when we say for the benefit of all beings, it's literally true, because you're walking around just like that dedication says, and people, just by hearing, seeing, talking to you, feel a blessing, even if they're mad. Famous old story when Karmapa, the 16th Karmapa, came to America, somebody famously got really, really, really angry at him and was kind of attacking. And one of his attendants was quietly trying to usher them away. And Karmapa said, "Oh, no, 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 no. That's a very strong connection he just made with me. This will be a benefit to him in the long run." And that's it. So even if you bring yourself to this state on the path to becoming an enlightened being, that means you're becoming an enlightened environment for the benefit of all beings. So that's why he says that. If we're worried about praise and whether we're getting it right or not, that's going to be the big obstacle that knocks us into the other loop. Because then when we don't get praised, guess what we are? We're victims. Yeah, you see, and it goes back to where we need to do a little practice again and take that one to the drawing board and see how that happened. And this is how we get to know our minds, and this is how we make our minds workable. It's all just very cool stuff. So thank you for your attention. I know I did the ending part pretty quick, but I won't be doing this next week, and I'll probably have a Dharma talk in about a month, but by then we'll all have forgotten what I've said. So it's true, right? Even me, yeah. So I wanted to bring it all together, even though probably the end could have used a little more time. So thank you, everybody. Let's do the dedication of merit. I think I've talked right through Q&A time. If anybody's got one question or answer, though, I always like that part the best, and it's the part I leave the least time for. So does anybody have anything that they'd like to ask or share? Sure.
I really appreciate your teaching. It amazes me how you can kind of just flow through all these different topics seamlessly and make it all very understandable, so I appreciate that.
Thank you.
So you kind of talked about when giving offerings,
Yeah.
one way to look at it is we're kind of accumulating merit. And I've also heard a couple other talks about karma and how when we're looking at like doing good or, showing compassion, we are developing good karma or good merit for ourselves or for the next lifetime. For me, how do you kind of balance that with developing good karma and good merit for yourself without having it kind of be ego-driven? I'm doing other things for other people because it feels good for me, and I'm developing good things for myself rather than I just want what's best for other people. Because to me, it seems like the main message is we're trying to create conditions where other people can be happy and other people can be without suffering rather than developing good karma for ourselves or trying to, have a good life form for the next life and things like that. So how do you kind of balance the two between those things?
Well, I think I would define ego a little differently than you.
Okay.
I would define ego as self-centeredness. And if you're doing something strictly to get an advantage for yourself and you're just manipulating the system, yeah, that's probably not going to take you to a place you want to be. Because you'll just wind up in a selfish place, even if you get really good at manipulating the system, right? Mm-hmm. And that's the way karma works. We're making our own bed and laying in it. It's not like there's somebody up there who's going to punish you for doing something wrong. We create the causes and conditions for things to happen, and there'll be right things or wrong things depending on what we're up to, right? So, in that meditation I shared from Lama Gregory, he starts with the violence in ourselves. And that's really the key advice, the way to not make it an ego trip, is realize we're all in it together. And realize it again and again and again. And of course you want to be happy. That's the point. Everybody wants to be happy. And when you understand your happiness is tied up in the happiness and the goodness of others, then it's not an ego trip anymore, right? It's just dealing with reality that, yeah, we all want to be happy. The problem is we just don't know how to do it. So Dharma is trying to say, this is how you create the causes and conditions for happiness to arise. It's wonderful if it happens for you, and you will be so happy you'll want to do it for others. That's not an ego trip. And karma will take care of itself if you're on that path. People asked the Buddha, one of the early people asked the historical Buddha to explain karma, and he said, that's one thing I'm not going to discuss with you. It's a vexing subject. That's a literal quote from the sutra. It's a vexing subject. The point is though, the dynamics of it, which loop you're in, is what matters, what your intention is, what your motivation is. So we always start with cultivating an altruistic motivation, and then you really, of course, in subtle ways, ego will co-opt some of that. You recognize it, you purify it, and you work with it, and you learn something. We just don't learn anything by being perfect. Make some mistakes, and look at them, and understand them. And you'll be able to help others a lot that way too. Because we're all in it together. We all have similar struggles. Anyway, does that help?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. I
Okay,
appreciate
thank you for your question. I know, I'm too late again. So let's do this dedication of merit and pay attention to the words. We'll do it in English, and you will, and ask yourself questions about these words on the way. So, like the first line, by this merit may all attain omniscience. Oh, okay, why? Be with that a little bit. And what does that mean? Well, guess what? If you see the interdependence of everything, and you can see how causes and conditions can cause anything to arise, that's omniscience. So we're praying that we realize ultimate truth, which is interdependence. Go through the whole thing like that, but we'll read it together in English, and the rest of it you can do on your own and have fun. Okay. By this merit, may all attain omniscience. May it defeat the enemy, wrongdoing. From the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death, from the ocean of samsara, may I free all beings. The courageous Manjushri, who knows everything as it is, Samantabhadra, who also knows in the same way, and all the bodhisattvas, that I may follow in their path, I completely dedicate all this virtue. Thank you, everybody. Rock on.